Oh my, here's your heads up to a slightly longer podcast. It's about 25-30 minutes long, and it's all come from a tip of the week from someone who I respect greatly and just got my mind thinking in all sorts of directions in a way that you can become totally competent, unconsciously competent, and get success from that. What does that all mean? Well, you're going to have to listen, okay? I'll meet you on the other side of this.
Warning. You are entering into the unplugged mind of Paul Cloughie. Too late. Personal Development Unplugged.
Hey, my friends. Paul here. Paul Cloughie, Personal Development Unplugged. And this podcast is all about, obviously, personal development, but breaking down what seems to be things that are made so complicated by other people, or just are complicated because we don't break them down into their simple processes, I guess. And my aim is to make things as simple as they need be, not oversimplified, but just break down those complicated things into systems, processes, those type of things that we could just use with ease and then get the results. And with that in mind, I was listening to a podcast. Really, Cloughie? Is that all you do? Well, it is a lot of what I do. I get some great things from it. And one of the things I got from a guy called Jordon Harbinger was a tip of the week. And it was all about, if you're moving home and you're packing up all your stuff in boxes, have one box, which is your first day box. So anything you need to be able to start without having to search through all that other stuff, going through everything you've got just to find the things that you need there and then. Now, I thought to myself, that's an awesome tip of the week, but it's also a flash of the bleeding obvious because it's common sense. But even that term, common sense, is not really right, is it? Because we don't see an awful lot of common sense around. Yet we all fall into that trap, the trap of not doing those things which are so obvious, and getting things ready before we start, thinking about things before we start, so we're prepared. And if we're prepared, anxiety has got to disappear as well, hasn't it? Fears have got to disappear because we're prepared. And the other part of this I'm thinking about, because I love sort of rituals, systems, processes, but to get them into our unconscious mind. So we go from conscious incompetence to conscious competence, and then unconscious competence. That's when we have mastery, that knowing what you do and doing what you know. And I love to think of ways of how we can do that. So could we have a first aid box of our systems, our processes, things that we need? Because sometimes, you see, if you don't do that with things like personal development, our own personal progress in this little world, trying to, we've all got little projects. Our life is one big project made up of lots of little projects, isn't it? But if we don't have an intention, we don't have an outcome, we don't know the direction we're going to go, we don't have those systems, processes in mind, those steps, then if we go slightly off course or up a dead end, we're wasting time. And for me, one of my things is time is so precious. Don't like wasting time. I do waste time, hands up, but I don't like it. It really bugs me. Now, I've got some examples, I guess, of what I've used in the past. And to me, they were brought to mind by this first day box, the simple things that you need before you start. Now, you see, at one time, when I was learning and using hypnotherapy, I had to learn some processes, but I also had to have them close by me just in case. So I'd write them out. I'd write them out like in a mind map, but then I'd reduce it down into a little, smaller than an A4 card, one of those tiny little index cards. And just by looking at it, I knew what to do. There were some things that I knew I wanted to do in a particular order, such as helping someone to stop smoking, because I knew we've developed a way to help people stop smoking, and it really works, really well. But there's a system to it. There's a set of processes set out in a particular way that really builds upon each other. Okay, you could do them randomly, but I don't like doing that. So I started to make a list of those, and they were always on my desk when I was working, just in case. But because I'd read them, I'd processed them, I'd made them, it was a mere fact of, in the end, just looking at them to know they were there. I mean, even now, I just have to think, and I'll see that card in my head. Sometimes in the processes, I'll do that. Sometimes if I want to know a metaphor, again, like with a mind map, I will just start to write out the metaphor into a form of a mind map, and then just break it down smaller and smaller. Well, not smaller, but more simple chunks that just will lead me on to. I don't want everything written down, because I want to be able to do it in my own voice at the right time with the right everything. And it's like this podcast. I have some go-tos that I know what I'm going to be doing. I have like a meta box which tells me just what is the big picture, the big thing I want out of this. Then I have some notes, little things of things I really want. And then as a mind map, I go through the same system. And after a while, I just write it down. I don't have to have a template. I don't have to have a template anymore, because it's there. So my template was my first aid box, but now I've got it unconscious, because that's where I want you to think about, or what I want you to think about, so you don't have to waste time. So if you're thinking about projects, what's a good project? I mean, I did a project I told you about a little while ago. I had this project in mind. I thought it was really good, really good. Then maybe I was advised that maybe that wasn't the right thing to do, but I had a template now, and I can follow that. So that's my first day box now for doing a project, because I just know that flow, that template will work, and I certainly adapt from it. But I'm starting from a good point, and I'm starting from the beginning, and I know what the end is, and I've just got I've got a skeleton, as it were. So I just got to put the flesh on the bones, so I don't go up a dead end. I don't go off target. So that's what I want for you to think about, because if there's a thing called conscious incompetence. I've mentioned this before. Conscious incompetence. What it means is you've started something and you just can't do it. You know it's there, and you know that it's going to be really difficult because you just haven't got those steps. So consciously, you don't know. Now, with this first aid box, or getting a format for yourself, we can start to move to a conscious competence. And conscious competence means now I do know, but it's a conscious thing that I have to think about. I have to be guided, because once you start doing that, you're then going to form a habit. You're getting this hardware, as it were, into your psyche, into your neurological pathway. So they start to wiring together. So then it becomes unconscious competence, where you just do things naturally. It's like driving a car. First time, conscious competence is, I've got to do this, I've got to do that, and it's clunky. But now when you've been driving for a little while, things become so easily, things become easy. They're comfortable to drive. You're not worrying about things, what's to do next, because you do it automatically. And automatically is what I want for you in your first day box for any project, anything you're doing. So what would the hardware be? Think about it. Let's think about it. Hardware to me, I guess, would be the templates. So for me, it starts off with a big journal, and I mind map. I think about it. I throw it out there. It doesn't matter if it's not perfect, because I don't want it perfect. I want to leave gaps. Even with a mind map, I'll leave a few lines which haven't got anything on them, because I know that's going to get my unconscious mind to think, well, what is there something we've missed? And it always seems to happen. There is something I've missed, but because I put a line there, it's got my unconscious mind to do it for me. And then when I've got that, I can then start to get it more in a way that I can just have the outline now. So I've got all the details, I'm now bringing it into something that I can carry in a card, maybe a small card. Maybe it's something I can do in a small notebook, because that's what it's all about, isn't it? So we've got what we need. I mean, I'll tell you how this tends to work. And I might have said this before, but it was a long time ago. I had to do a project for my master practitioner in NLP. That's the course I was on. So learning to be a master practitioner of neuro-linguistic programming. And what we had to do was a modelling course. And modelling I thought to myself, I'm going to do the most easiest thing I can think of. I just want to be able to do it. And I didn't realise, even trying to model the most simplest of things, there's a lot of detail in that. So I was glad I tried to pick the most simplest thing, because there was still a lot of things to do in it. So I got it right. I didn't get overwhelmed. And I won't go into all the details, but I picked this thing. I modelled a person. I went out and did that thing with the model that I'd modelled, and it worked. And then I had to do a presentation on what I did, what I'd done, what I've been doing. And I had all these on a card, because I started off with a book when I modelled, then I did the experience and I diaried it out so I knew what I'd done, and then I put them onto cards, little mind map cards, so I could give this presentation. And because I'd broken it down into such a way, I had half a dozen cards, which I know now is totally the wrong thing to do to take on a presentation, because if you drop them, you've had it. But just to prepare that way was awesome, because I put the cards beside me and I just went through that presentation. So I've got my little safety net there if I needed it, which I didn't, because by breaking it down into these simple little moves, the simple parts of the process, the paradigm, the system, the ritual, I just automatically knew unconsciously what to say next. And I felt so confident, because the one thing you can do is you can recall that little piece of paper, that card, in your mind's eye. So as you're talking, you can pull it up. And as you're looking at it, you can then start talking about it. And it's amazing that way. There's a great thing as an app called Cloughie. That's the one I worked out this project skeleton. It's like a mind map, but it seems to just go down in one direction as opposed to going round. You know, you could, if you really wanted to, and I've written a little sad face against this, you could make a list. Oh, they're so boring. Lists are boring to me anyway. But whatever you do, you can begin to think, well, what are the things that work? Why do I want to reinvent the wheel each time? Do I really want to go down a dead end and then have to come back and redo stuff? Or do I really want to go off tangent because I haven't quite thought about this, put the steps in place? And of course you don't. So you get that hardware. So that hardware can come into your mind, your unconscious mind. It's always there for you, because after a while, it'll just work perfectly. And the thing is, you can adapt it. So as you do a project or as you prepare for something, and this could be for anything, things you do over and over again. So you get your system, you get your ritual, you get your processes or process. It goes into your unconscious mind and becomes a habit. You then become the master of it, because you're now doing what you know and knowing what you do. And add to that, though, this is where I think it takes it from common sense to a much higher level. You then, in this system, this ritual, you begin to get your own software in action, such as setting your outcome, because each project, whilst being similar, will have its own outcome, its own goal. So it's good to know that you're going to set and revisit the outcome, so you don't go off on a blind alley. You don't go off direction. So I've always got the outcome. I've got that big picture in mind where I'm going. All the details are in those little mind maps, but I've got my outcome, the big picture. And the other thing in our software is our intention. Because if you're going to set your intention of what you're going to do, you're telling your unconscious mind, here's where I'm going. This is the direction I'm going, my outcome. And this is what I want for it. This is why I'm doing it. This is my intention. This is why it's important to me. Because when you get aligned, you become congruent. And therefore you start to see the things that you need just for that one thing. So when you focus, you do your deep work on it, boom, it's going to be awesome. The other thing on the software side is to set your state. Because sometimes you're going to be want to be maybe focused. Other times you're going to be curious. Sometimes you're going to be more motivated. Maybe a recipe of those three or more. So you're going to learn to set your state. And once you learn to set your state, it becomes a ritual. It just becomes part of the process. How do you do all of those? Well, there's certainly some FMQs and longer podcasts about outcomes, intentions, setting your states. But there's also hypnosis tracks. Where do you get them? I'm going to ask you that question now. I wonder where you get them, Paul. Or where do I get them, Paul? Maybe that's a better way you would ask me. And I'll say, well, that's a damn good question. Here's what you do. You go to paulcloughonline.com/podcast, sign up, boom, over 40 hypnosis tracks. But you'll see them. Well-formed outcome, setting your intention, setting your state. And then when you've got it all together, you can begin to adapt it. It'll evolve and become more unconscious competence. And the thing is, when you start doing this, people are going to get so impressed with you because you're going to start to do the things that people don't normally do, which are the things which are common sense, the things which are the bleeding obvious. But you'll be getting success. You'll be seeing things when they go slightly awry as opposed to going completely up in the air. So you can then bring them back in the right direction. You can point them to that big picture. If something comes from the side, you can actually ask people, well, what does that have to do with the direction we're going with our outcome? Because if it doesn't, you're going to sideline it for a little while. We'll park that, we'll use it later. And then as you do that, you can begin to teach people, which is the awesome thing. We talk about the integrated field of learning. So as you talk about this, teaching it is just by talking and mentoring maybe somebody, showing somebody what you do, because when they do it, they will adapt it slightly different for them. They'll evolve it for them. And as you see that and ask them what they're doing, you can take from them the differences and add it to yours whenever you need this. Therefore, it's evolving even more. And this is, I guess, how people develop their own systems, their own processes that they write about. And then we'll break it back down again. But there's the thing. I'd love you just to think about having a first day box for a project, something you want to do, basically for anything. Maybe it's an interview. Maybe it's, if you're a therapist, the first consultation, some of the things you always do. So you get to remember all the important things without any worry. Because when you're like this, your unconscious mind goes, we're in control. We're there. I can keep you safe and get you more inspired and get you more motivated, and the results will come. And I'll make sure that you notice everything that's going on because we've got everything in hand. And now that to me is awesome. And the weird thing is, this all came from a throwaway tip of the week from a real nice guy called Jordon Harbinger. If you haven't heard of him, it's Jordon Harbinger. The podcast is the Jordon Harbinger podcast. That's it. Or the Jordon Harbinger show, I think he calls it. And it's an awesome show. Great interviewer. He is an excellent interviewer. And he got some great stuff. So have a listen to him too. And then you'll see how I get some of the things thinking in my head. Because they're great things just get just to ruminate about stuff. Just stop and think. Just have a pleasant meander in your mind and get curious. How can I use this? How can I develop that? How can I make it mine? I can take yours, put it into me, develop it a little bit, and it becomes mine. I never say I invented it. All the stuff I do tends to come from other people. I've developed my own processes as well, but they're all been inspired by other people. And I think that's the way it should be. None of this is my private system. This is my private process, and I'm not going to, it's a secret and all that stuff. We don't do that. This is sharing and caring. And talking about sharing and caring, well, I thought you might say that, Paul, is have you shared this podcast to anybody? Because really, that's the pay it forward, the cost of this. Hopefully you've got something from it. I said it most times that not every podcast will light your bushel, if that's the thing that they do, or float your boat. But I hope there'll be at least one takeaway, something you can use even if it's in a different context from every episode, the 5-minute quickie to the longer podcast. That's my aim. And if you do that and you get it, would you please share it? Because that's how this podcast becomes wider available to other people. That's how they find it, word of mouth. So if you would share it to your friends and the people who maybe not quite your friends, but it doesn't really matter, does it? Because you're doing this to help them. And when you help them, that's how you would network, providing selfless service, and you'll get it repaid back. So listen to this, share it, that'll be awesome. And the other thing, I always ask, would you just put a review up onto, ideally, iTunes, the Castbox app, or whatever you listen to. But ideally those two, they're the main two I think that are the highest in rankings. And that enables people to hear about this podcast. And again, do the same thing. And then they'll give us some thoughts by emailing me their feedback, what they need. And you'll get to hear about that too. So that's what I'd ask for you. If you could, it would be awesome. I'd be eternally grateful. And I'd be able to just sit in my own mind thinking, how lovely was that? Thank you so much. I'll be eternally grateful. And that's a nice feeling to be, isn't it? Okay, I'm going to leave you with all that. There'll be a little bit coming on at the end of this. Please listen to that too. But in the meantime, just enjoy every heartbeat. And maybe forget that your unconscious mind will surprise your conscious mind and feel happy for no reason. But you don't need to remember what you don't need to. Well, what you can forget, and allow your unconscious mind to remember what's important. Hey, what happened there? Enjoy. Bye now. If you're suffering from things like anger, excessive anger in your life, too much sadness that keeps recurring and recurring, fear of anything, or just grieving too much about loss, maybe you're jealous, or maybe your self-confidence it's never high enough. Or like your self-esteem, that's never high enough. And it should be. And you shouldn't have to suffer through anger, sadness, fear, grief, jealousy. Do you know what? I hadn't thought about this for a little while, but why don't you come and work with me? Because, I've told you before that I work online, I do coaching, I do therapy online, but I've never really thought about offering it directly to you. So why not? Don't listen to what other people say when they say, things take such a long time, because they don't. 2-3 sessions is generally all that's needed to get rid of some of the biggest problems in people's lives. I see it day in, day out with my clients. So if that's something you can consider, because I do know this, that we always put things off. We put things off and then we'll go to that bit where we go, oh, if only I did. So here's the thing. Imagine that putting off has gone by and you've decided to send me an email. An email at feedback@personaldevelopmentunplugged.com saying, hi Paul, I've got this issue. I'd like to work with you. And here's my telephone number. Here's my email address. And the thing is, what would happen is we get in contact over the internet, online. We do an initial consultation. It doesn't take very long to make sure that we're a good fit and make sure you're really comfortable with me. I know you've listened to me a lot, but you really want to see the whites of my eyes. And let me explain how we work together. And if that is right, and it's right for you, and I want to make sure it's right for you, I don't work with just anybody and everybody, only the people who I feel I can really help. Then we'll organise 2 or 3 sessions and get the thing sorted. Okay? So why not send me that email now? Don't think any longer. Stop. Get online. Give me an email. And let's do some work together. If you really are interested in making deep changes, I really always suggest one-to-one. Yes, this Personal Development Unplugged podcast gives you all the tools, but let's get rid of the deep underlying issues so you can really make use of all the tools here. Anyway, that's enough from me. If you want it and you want to let go of that stuff really quickly, and you like me, and you like to work with me, then send me that email. If it's not for you, that's fine. Just keep listening and keep sharing. Okay? Anyway, I'll hear from you real soon, I'm sure. See you now.
Warning, you are now leaving the unplugged mind of Paul Clough. It's time to fly on your own. Be brave, my friend.
Personal Development Unplugged.